The only thing that I really remember is that skaters wore Vans, and you're not going to see anyone else wearing them.
The brand has transcended beyond just being a skate brand. You've got now people who are wearing it strictly for its fashion sensibility.
Vans are one of the most in-demand shoes in the world. Vans brought in $3.5 billion between April 2020 and March 2021, and it's the top-selling brand in fashion conglomerate VF Corp's portfolio. The second most popular brand for VF, North Face, brought in around $2.5 billion during that same period. But Vans wasn't always cashing in. For decades, Vans survived on their identity as a skateboarding brand. But throughout the early 90s, skateboarding underwent a transformation that would change Vans' consumer base forever.
The emergence of street skating and how that completely just took over skateboarding was a collective cultural event, not just from skateboarding, but from the standpoint of hip-hop as well.
Here's how hip-hop culture helped take Vans from an emerging skateboard brand to a multi-billion-dollar fashion staple. Vans founder Paul Van Doren didn't plan on making a skateboarding shoe. In the 1960s, Van Doren worked for Randolph Rubber Company in Massachusetts, where workers sewed the upper canvas elements for major shoe retailer Keds. After 20 years at Randolph Rubber, Van Doren grew frustrated with the shoe distribution process, which motivated him to pursue his own shoe venture in Anaheim, California. Knowing that Converse and Keds led the market, Van Doren wanted to make a shoe twice as durable. So he created extra thick soles using vulcanized rubber, and for the shoe's upper, Van Doren used heavy duck canvas. The Van Doren Rubber Company opened for business on March 16, 1966, and on the first day of business, the Van Dorens sold 12 pairs of Vans at $249 per box. While the Van Doren Rubber Company was building their consumer base in Anaheim, skateboarding was taking over in surrounding cities.
Skate was really an offshoot of surf. And we start seeing skate kind of pick up in the 40s and 50s, and it becomes much more of an American phenomenon in the 1970s.
In the 1970s, skateboarders took the sport to a new level, most famously by breaking into backyards and dropping into empty swimming pools, also known as bowls. They needed something affordable with strong grip that could ground them in vertical movements, and Van Doren's shoe could do that. Soon, Vans formed partnerships with pioneering skaters like Tony Alva and officially branded the term "off the wall." Outside of the skate bowl, pop culture also played a role in boosting Vans' reach. Sean Penn famously wore slip-on checkered Vans in the 1982 film Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Following that exposure, Vans' value doubled from $20 million to $40 million. Unfortunately, that fanfare was short-lived. After attempting a massive expansion, the brand reportedly lost $3.6 million, forcing the owners to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 1984. Paul Van Doren returned as president after his brother and co-founder James Van Doren led the company from 1976 to 1984. After cutting nearly half their staff and closing 11 of 61 stores, the Van Doren Rubber Company paid back their debt in 3 years. In an effort to reinvent the brand, Vans took what they called a marketing-driven approach, which included investments and partnerships in massive events like the Triple Crown of skateboarding, the Triple Crown of surfing, and famously, the Warped Tour, making the 90s a golden era for brand culture at Vans. It was also a golden era for skateboarding. Pete Thompson began skateboarding as a kid in California. After moving to North Carolina as a teenager, he pursued street photography, capturing a significant shift in skateboarding.
When I started skateboarding when I was 10, it was mostly white kids. There wasn't really that much diversity. As skateboarding started to shift from vert skating to street skating, that opened everything up. Because now you had, black and brown kids, Asian kids, all started to sort of be interested in skateboarding because they could do it in their own neighborhoods now. They didn't need a big ramp. They didn't need to be in California.
Pete Thompson said this was a sort of rebellion against the traditional skateboarding of previous decades.
I think a lot of street skaters were sort of like, we're gonna redefine skateboarding in terms of the tricks that we do, the clothes that we wear, the music we listening to.
While street skating gained traction, it intersected with another pioneering cultural movement, hip-hop.
It just felt like the culture of skateboarding and the culture of hip-hop had the same interest, which was innovation and contributing to the culture.
Elena Romero, author of Freestylin', How Hip-Hop Changed the Fashion Industry, says the anti-establishment ethos of skateboarding and hip-hop helped merge the two worlds.
Ultimately, the skaters expanded their musical genre and taste, and the hip-hop personas or the entities ended up taking on an additional sport.
If you want to talk about an actual hip-hop group that was really intrinsically tied to street skating, it was Hyro. They actually knew a lot of skateboarders in the Bay, so those skateboarders ended up featuring some of their music in their videos. At the time, if you watched these skate videos, when you put the VHS tape into the machine and turned it on, not only were you seeing amazing skateboarding, but you were hearing like unheard underground tracks.
Eventually, this underground overlap would carve out new trends in fashion.
In the 90s, my students used to call it skirban, the blend of skate and urban. What was called the urban consumer has kind of morphed into this category of streetwear. But the black and brown consumer had been othered for a very long time.
One of street skating's early pioneers, Stevie Williams, even went on to found his own brand, DGK, which stands for Dirty Ghetto Kids. Williams told Transworld Skateboarding magazine that he created DGK after being outcast as a young, black street skater in Philadelphia, stating, at the time, they didn't really want photographers taking photos of us, sort of like, don't take photos of them, they're just dirty ghetto kids.
There's only a handful of guys that could really sum up what that decade of skateboarding was like. Stevie's sort of embodied a lot of those qualities of skateboarding during that time.
While the street skating movement was changing the trajectory of skateboarding, Vans became more focused on their core consumer, making massive investments in media, skate parks, and adjacent sports like snowboarding. Between 1985 and 2003, Vans' net sales grew from $88 million to over $330 million, but with their growing investments, the company still struggled to turn a profit. By 2003, the brand was reportedly losing $30 million per year. And in 2004, it was announced that the Van Doren family would sell Vans Inc. to fashion conglomerate VF Corp for $396 million.
Brands in the skate business have always grappled with wanting to reach a larger customer base. But how do you do that without going too far to the extreme where you've moved away from your core?
While VF Corp was still honing in on Vans' relationship with skateboarding consumers, hip-hop artists who merged skateboarding and music were entering the mainstream. Musicians like Pharrell Williams, famously known as Skateboard P, and Lupe Fiasco endorsed a style that felt new to young consumers. During that same period, a small rap group out of Berkeley, California released a song that would change the reach of the Vans brand forever. The Pac song Vans first hit airwaves in 2006 with a repetitive verse that had staying power. The chorus went like this: "Got my Vans on, but they look like sneakers." The Vans song echoed from the West Coast to the East, and young, black consumers were purchasing Vans for the first time. One Vans customer even told the Los Angeles Times that he had never been to a Vans store before hearing the song, but was now purchasing a fourth and fifth pair of the skateboarding shoe. While Vans doesn't openly acknowledge the sneaker anthem's significance, shop owners at the time witnessed the song's impact, with one store owner in Berkeley, California saying, "I have definitely seen more of an urban customer coming in for Vans. Previously, it was more of just skateboard kids. Now, they're more of a hip-hop crowd." According to fashion experts, the streetwear market was growing by a staggering 30 to 40% during the early 2010s. So it isn't surprising that by 2011, VF Corp reported Vans' first $1 billion in annual global sales. And at this point, company strategy underwent a noticeable change, with VF's 2011 annual report stating that their new off-the-wall collection blends street and athletic styling to create a new line of sophisticated footwear that expands the brand's offerings beyond skate performance. Vans has enjoyed a steady growth in sales thanks to youth culture, but as consumers shifted from mainly white male to black and brown, complaints about the company's lack of racial representation became contentious. One influential leader in the fashion space, who asked to remain anonymous, told Make It that they felt used by Vans on many occasions, especially in regards to race and social issues, further expressing concern about the hiring practices of Vans' leadership team. In a statement to CNBC Make It, Vans said, "Advancing racial equity will remain a top priority in our purpose as a brand and as an organization. We have set a long-term commitment to further diversify our corporate and management teams, and specifically aim to improve our BIPOC representation at the director and above level from 21 to 25% by 2025. In 2018, the Vans leadership team said they were eyeing $5 billion in annual revenue by 2023. Because of economic setbacks following the COVID-19 pandemic, the brand says they are no longer sticking to those projections. But they're still counting on the pulse of sports, music, and youth culture to reach an increasingly diverse consumer.
The fact that Vans replicates authenticity is something easily a young consumer is going to gravitate to.
In terms of street style becoming so prevalent, I feel like it comes from a place of skaters didn't give a shit. They weren't trying to sell clothes to the masses. What they were doing was unique and it was their own, but it was never meant to be this giant thing for everyone. And I think, in a sense, that's what everyone has sort of latched onto.